Today we're going to talk about the energy metabolism states, and these states are three states. The first one is called the well-fed state. The second one is the post-absorptive state, and the last one is the prolonged fast state. So we'll start with the first state, which is the well-fed one. Now, when someone is well-fed, this would lead to an increase in the glucose levels in the blood. So glucose will increase. Now, as glucose increases in the blood, this would trigger the action of a hormone. This hormone would be insulin. So insulin would be active. So what does insulin do? In order to categorize the structures according to the effect of insulin, we can have two categories. We would have insulin dependent and insulin independent structures. The insulin dependent structures are the liver, muscles, and adipose tissue. So these structures are dependent on the action of insulin. The independent structures are the brain and the nervous system, and we have also the red blood cells, erythrocytes. And what this means is that these structures doesn't depend on insulin in order to regulate their energy metabolism needs. So we'll see. For the liver, what does the insulin do? For the muscles and for the adipose tissue. For all of these structures, insulin would trigger the storage of glucose. So this high level of glucose would be maintained by getting all of this glucose and storing it in the liver, the muscles, and the adipose tissue. This is one thing. And then we have for each structure a specific effect. For the liver, for example, insulin would trigger the synthesis of glycogen. Glycogen is the form of storage of glucose. So inside the liver we would have glycogen. Glucose would be transformed into glycogen, and then the excess glucose for the needs of the liver would be transformed into fatty acids and triglycerides. Then, in the muscles, insulin would trigger the protein synthesis. So in the muscles would have more protein, and in the adipose tissue, of course, would have more fat, so fatty acids, more fatty acids. So this is the action of insulin on the dependent elements. For the independent ones, the brain and the nervous system, what they do is that they take the glucose and they burn it down in order to obtain water plus carbon dioxide. And this is how they obtain the energy in the well-fed state and normal fasting. So well-fed state and normal fasting. In case of prolonged fasting, we would have another condition, as we'll see later. For the red blood cells, whatever happens, prolonged fasting, normal fasting, well-fed state, whatever, they would always use glucose through burning it down as they have their own mitochondria. So as long as the red blood cell has its own mitochondria, it will use glucose in order to reach its energy needs. It doesn't depend on insulin in one way or another, or any other kind of structure. So this was the well-fed state. Now the second state, which is the post-absorptive state, after maintaining the glucose levels and all of this, the glucose levels relatively, after they were high, they would be low. And this would trigger two other hormones. A hormone which has a function which is totally opposite to insulin. It's an agonist to insulin, which is glucagon. So glucagon would be activated, and we have another hormone which is epinephrine. Epinephrine. Or adrenaline. It's the same hormone. It's a corticosteroid. So we have epinephrine and norepinephrine are the same as adrenaline and noradrenaline. They are the same hormones. So we have here epinephrine and glucagon. Those hormones would act in the post-absorptive state. So what happens is in the liver, we mentioned that the glucose that was in the blood was stored in the form of glycogen. So what happens is that glucagon would take the glycogen and break it down once more into glucose. So the glycogen would be transformed once more into glucose and released into the blood stream. And it's worth mentioning that actually glycogen in the process of glycogenolysis, lysis means the breakdown, so glycogenolysis is triggered by the action of glucagon, and at the same time we have gluconeogenesis, which is actually also triggered by glucagon, but the response of the liver to the order to perform glycogenolysis is faster than the order to perform gluconeogenesis. This is why it's so significant for glucagon, and this is why we always mention this function. So glycogen would be broken down into glucose and released into the blood stream. Also in the muscles and the adipose tissue, the fatty acids and the triglycerides that were stored in the very first place would be released again in the blood stream. So a function which is totally different to the other one. This action would actually be triggered because of the decrease in the levels of insulin due to the release of glucagon and due to the increase in epinephrine. So an increase in epinephrine and a decrease in insulin would trigger this action. And this is the post-absorptive state. This state would happen, let's say, in an overnight sleep, overnight fast. So a very normal kind of fast. Now we're going to talk about the prolonged fast state.